Thousands of protesters take to the streets across India to condemn a new law they say is anti-Muslim. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. For weeks now, protesters angered by India's new citizenship law have held demonstrations across the country. The new law allows Hindus, Christians and other religious minorities who are in India illegally a path to citizenship if they can prove they were persecuted because of their religion in Muslim-majority Bangladesh, Pakistan and Afghanistan. At least 23 people have been killed in demonstrations since the Indian Parliament passed the law in December. Critics say the legislation violates India's secular constitution and is an attempt by Narendra Modi's government to marginalize the country's 200 million Muslims. The Indian Prime Minister defends his decision.
Muslims who were born on Indian soil or whose ancestors are children of Mother India have nothing to do with the citizenship law or the National Register of Citizens. Muslims are not being sent to any detention centers, nor there are any detention centers. Brothers and sisters, this is a white lie.
For more now on India's citizenship law, let's bring in our first guest. Amish Tripathi is an Indian diplomat and director of the Nehru Centre in London. He's also a columnist and accomplished author. Amish, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Anand.
Now, this new law in India is causing a lot of controversy, and it's also resulted in major demonstrations against the government. Critics say it discriminates against Muslims and that it is a violation of India's secular constitution. To which you would say what?
Unfortunately, there is a lot of misinformation around this act. Let me, draw a simile. If you look in the mid-20th century, there were many countries which ran accelerated refugee status to citizenship for Jews who were being massacred to extinction in Germany. No one called it an anti-Christian act just because you're giving refuge to Jews, because they were at serious risk of being exterminated to extinction out there. What has been offered and what has been done in India today, it doesn't impact any Indian at all. No Indian Hindus, Indian Muslims, none of them get impacted. Essentially, it is a law for the minorities of Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan, to get an accelerated path to citizenship. It's not that the majority Muslim community in Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan cannot apply for citizenship in India. In fact, many of them do. All that has been changed is that what is a 11-year process for the majority of these three countries has been accelerated to 5 years for the minority community of these three countries.
But this is a law, Amish, this is a law in India that specifically excludes Muslims. I mean, you bring up the comparison with Jewish people in Europe in the last century. Yes, there certainly were countries that passed legislation welcoming Jews into their countries, but they did not exclude other religious groups. This law does that.
No, Anand, that's where the misinformation is. It does not exclude Muslims. I should let you know that just as recently as 2015, around 15,000 Bangladeshis, mostly Muslims, were given citizenship in India. It does not exclude Muslims at all. All it does is give an accelerated path. That is it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let's
the minorities of these three countries.
All right.
That is misinformation, and that's one of the sad parts that's happening. That the lies run halfway around the world before the truth can even get its shoes on. That's
all right. Well, let's look at the law itself. It says here, the law says that it grants, as you pointed out, fast-tracked citizenship to undocumented migrants from the, quote, and I'm quoting here, Hindu, Sikh, Buddhist, Jain, Parsi or Christian community from Afghanistan, Bangladesh or Pakistan who entered India on or before the 31st day of December 2014. No mention of Muslims.
That's what I just said, that Muslims come, this is only an amendment to the Citizenship Act that already exists. Muslims can come in through the standard process in any case. This is only an accelerated path to those who are suffering oppression. So it's like this. The population proportion of the minorities, if you the reduction in that, in these three countries, over the last 70 years, if you match it to the population today, there are 60 million fewer minorities than there should have been. in Pakistan, Bangladesh and Afghanistan. This is a huge number. Professor Barkat of Bangladesh, he has done a study on the, the vast reduction in minorities in Bangladesh. He says within 30 years there will be no minorities to save. So this is the urgent issue, and which is why they've been given refuge. And
how will this law be implemented, Amish? How will someone prove that they're Hindu, especially in rural areas of India where a lot of people don't have documentation? But how would you go about just, basically setting up a system where you say this person's Hindu and this person's Muslim?
I'm not so sure that the rules and procedures have been notified as yet. So that has to be rolled out. So it will be, one will have to see how it works. And yes, of course, there should be feedback taken, and all of us should give our inputs to make sure that the process works as smoothly as it's possible. One of the things, though, one has to realize in India, we are a continental scale country. We are 1.3 billion people. We have more people in India than all of North America, all of Europe, all of Middle East, all of North Africa put together. So any process does become hugely complex.
What about those critics?
And we must, of course, take that into account. I don't deny that.
Yeah. What about those critics who say that this law will essentially render thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, or even millions of people stateless?
I am not so sure on what basis they are making those claims. Now, if they are referring to illegal immigrants, there are illegal immigrants in Europe, in the US, in many parts of the world. There are, of course, procedures on how illegal immigrants are to be treated. But even in the US or in Europe, illegal immigrants are not given citizenship rights. They are given support by decent, law-abiding, liberal countries, as India is. But they're not given citizenship right? Not even in the US.
Now, if you find that there is an illegal immigrant in India who is
Muslim...
That is
if you're referring to illegal immigrants.
Right. Yeah. If you find that there are illegal immigrants in India who are Muslim, what happens to them?
As of now, in fact, because we are a poor country, so we don't have, well organized, say, a detention center system, as say countries in Europe have, or the US has, or many of the richer countries, because you guys can afford to build better detention centers. From what I know of the process, unfortunately, many of the illegal immigrants, when they are identified as illegal immigrants, are often, like in many poor countries, actually put into jails, which the courts have said is actually not right, because jails are not organized for families, and the illegal immigrants cannot be treated as criminals. So centers should be built up to house them, just like you have in richer countries.
So you will have detention centers in India?
Europe. I don't know if something is going to be built or not, but I know there are detention centers in the US and Europe. There are, right, for illegal immigrants, because illegal immigrants cannot be put into jails. That's not the right thing to do.
But is that your argument? Because there are detention centers in Europe and the United States, India can have detention centers as well?
No, are you saying that India should not follow the standards of the US and Europe? I didn't understand your question.
That's the question I'm asking you. Should India follow...
Are you saying... No, I'm asking a counter question.
Yeah.
Are you saying that US and Europe are not following proper systems for illegal immigrants?
No, but I'm asking whether
Because
that justifies India's detention centers.
No, I'm saying that if there is a system in the US and Europe, which if you think needs reform, then perhaps the media should take it up out there.
Right.
And then India can learn from the richer countries.
There have been widespread demonstrations in India against this new law. Some of those demonstrations have turned violent. Security forces, in some instances, have responded with live ammunition. 23 people have been killed. Here is what some of the protesters have been saying. Let's listen to them.
It's very obvious that for all the criticisms we have had of India for 7 decades, somewhere deep inside there is a sense that India belongs to everybody. And these are young people who are risking their lives and their careers and their limbs.
We're Indians, we're together, we're democratic, and we're like this. Religion is not to be in a discussion ever. I'm sorry, that's what I've come here in solidarity of.
We're protesting against CAA, NRC and NRP, which is dividing the nation in terms of religion, which is absolutely unethical, inhuman.
So, Amish, there we heard demonstrators, they're talking about this law being unethical, being inhumane. Don't these demonstrators have a point?
No, we are a democracy, so so people have a right to state their point of view, and it is up to the government or the supporters of this act to to engage with them. The way to put it across is all this act is doing is giving refuge to people who are being persecuted to extinction. I'll repeat once again: there are 60 million fewer minorities than there should have been in these three countries, and Bangladesh and Afghanistan, at least now, are working at protecting their remaining minorities. But in Pakistan, we know exactly what is happening. Afghanistan and Bangladesh have improved. There's no doubt about it over the last few years. So there are 60 million fewer minorities than there should have been if you take the same population proportion at independence 70 years ago. All that is being done with CAA is refuge is being given to those oppressed minorities who, I might point out, are largely backward caste and Dalit Hindus and Christians.
But is this not a violation of India's secular constitution?
India's secular constitution works towards, also has the concept of positive discrimination towards those who need help. So, for example, I'm sure I don't know if you're aware or not, but India runs the largest positive discrimination program in the history of humanity for its backward caste and Dalits. Where they're given positive discrimination in education, in jobs, in promotions. India runs specific protection programs for educational institutions. Like, for example, central government laws apply only on educational institutions that are run by the majority. The minority community-run educational institutions, central government laws don't apply. Now, there are some who say that actually there should be equal laws to all. I'm not getting into that debate. But the point of positive discrimination towards those who may be suffering is actually a part of our secular constitution.
Right.
And what is happening with CAA is positive discrimination is being given to two minority groups that have lost 60 million people.
Yeah, I get your point. India, the Indian constitution certainly has built-in affirmative action programs, but here you have a law that discriminates on one religious group. It's not positive discrimination.
No. Here you have a law which is it's equivalent to saving Jews in the mid 20th century.
Yeah, but
or saving the Yazidis in the Islamic State time. Here you have a law which is protecting minorities, which, from the words of Professor Barkat, a Bangladeshi professor, or Pakistani scholar Farhanaz Isfahani, who was saying very clearly, there'll be no one left to save 25-30 years later, because they'll all be wiped out. That's what this law is doing. I'll repeat once again, it's actually a law of humanity to save refugees who are being persecuted to extinction. That's what is happening. It does not impact any Indian, leave alone Indian Muslims. And I'll repeat once again that Muslims or majority communities from Pakistan, Bangladesh or Afghanistan who are facing individual oppression can continue to come to India, and many of them do come, and they are given citizenship and refuge and asylum in India. We're a country that gave refuge. The fact that we are a kind, liberal country is a part of our culture.
Okay, sir, we're going to have to leave it there. Amish Tripathi, thanks so much for your time and for joining us. Next, we'll speak with a political analyst and a journalist for their views on India's citizenship law. Stay with us. You're watching The Heat.